Good evening. My name is Joseph Fahey. I direct the theater program at The Ohio State University at Mansfield, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's performance of Separate Together for November 12th, 2020. Tonight's selections include a staged reading of an excerpt from the comedy Here Today and Gone Tomorrow by a Mansfield native and Pulitzer Prize winner Louis Bromfield and George Hawkins, and a performance of Woody by Jim Stoner. This is a one-man performance honoring Coach Wayne Woodrow Hayes. Each performance runs about 20 minutes, and the second offering does contain strong language.
The Busy Bee restaurant opposite the railroad station in Bucyrus, Ohio. At the back, there is a door and two windows looking out on the railroad yards where the signal lights are visible beyond piles of baggage. At the right of the door is a showcase filled with cigars and chewing gum and a cash register. On the opposite side is an upright piano. There are 3 or 4 tables covered with cheap tablecloths and a lunch counter. The walls are decorated with advertisements for Bach beer, various brands of cigars, and a couple of railroad posters advertising excursions to Cedar Point, Akron, and Cleveland. The kitchen is beyond the door on the left. There's a telephone and a coat rack with a woman's hat and coat on it. At the opposite side of the room is a door leading to the men's lavatory. On it is painted the inscription, Gents Wash Room. It is midnight on a Saturday night in the winter of 1912. There's a blizzard raging outside. The wind howls from time to time. At the piano, seated with his back to the audience, is Sam Bernheimer, advance agent for the Imperial Vaudeville Troupe, which has been playing a one-night stand at the Bucyrus Opera House. He is a handsome, rather heavy man, dressed in a flashy green suit and a checked vest. He wears a brown derby on the back of his head. He has a way of talking with his cigar hanging from the corner of his mouth. He speaks the richest Broadway ease. He's about 33 or 4 and has spent his life knocking about with one odd job after another, most of them on the shady side. Beyond the cash register on a high stool sits Pearl Schmidlap. She is dressed as a waitress and is the small-town belle who lives on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. She goes big with the local brakemen and conductors. Now, she is leaning over the showcase, wrapped with passionate interest in Mr. Bernheimer's account of himself. She is hungry for adventure and life and the bright lights of Broadway. Sam, turning on his piano stool,
and I says to Ziegfeld, Flo, that's a great little song, but he wouldn't believe it. You think he'd listen to me? Nah. But I know a thing or two, girlie, and I know a good song when I hear it. So I just kept at him for his own good. There was nothing in it for me. I says, I know it's a good song, and I know just the gal to sing it, I says. And that's Lorraine Gal. Lily, her name is. It was my judgment that made Lily and Lorraine and gave that song a chance. If it hadn't been for me, nobody would have heard of Lily Lorraine.
You're wonderful. I bet you could do anything for a girl's career.
Oh, sure. You'd be surprised if you knew how many stars had been helped to their present role by Sam Bernheimer.
I should think Mr. Ziegfeld could never do enough for you.
No, sadly enough, life ain't like that. It never is. I always keep saying to myself, Sam, you ought never do anybody a favor. It always puts you under obligations. It was just like that with Ziegfeld. As soon as I'd done him this favor, he says to me, Sam, I can never do enough for you. Will you do me a favor and look after the road company of the Imperial Vaudeville Troupe? It ain't much of a job. Between you and me, it ain't much of a company. But what could I do?
That's just it. What could you do?
Well, I had to help him out. I just says, yes, Flo, I'll do it as a favor, but after that's over, I want something big and worthy of me.
Pearl, hanging farther and farther over the showcase.
Gee, you must be a big guy on Broadway.
Say, you trying to kid me?
No, how could I kid you?
Well, you never can tell.
Sam starts strumming on the piano again. Pearl, leaning further over the cigar case.
I don't know what he'd have done without you.
Sam stopping the piano.
Say, if you lean over any further, you're gonna come a cropper.
It's nailed fast.
Well, don't do it anyway. Makes me nervous. I'm all nerves, you know. You'd be surprised how sensitive I am.
Yeah, Homer says all artistic people are like that.
Sam strumming again.
Who's Homer?
He's my fiancé.
Is he artistic?
He won the state oratory medal.
No.
He's handsome, too. Got long yellow hair. He's a brakeman. All the girls is running after him. He says you gotta have a pole. That's what all these stars has.
Oh, a lot of them wouldn't have got anywhere but for Paul. Guys like me and Flo Ziegfeld.
I'm kind of crazy about the stage myself.
Yeah?
But I never could, because while Paul was alive, I and Beulah had to help around the restaurant.
Who's Beulah?
You must have seen her. She's my cousin. Today's her day in the kitchen.
A regular socialist, ain't you?
We see a lot of theatrical people. I've seen Maud Odell and William Hodge and Mrs. Leslie Carter.
Outside is heard a barking noise, irregular and noisy.
What's that?
Seals. The show must be over.
I never knew seals made a noise like that.
Ain't you never seen a seal?
No, I was Toledo once with Beulah. We went to see Aunt Hazel, who's in an asylum there. But there wasn't no seals in the zoo there. They only had lions.
Take my advice and never go on no stage. You ain't any idea the heart breaks. You know that song?
Sam begins to play There's a Broken Heart for Every Light on Broadway.
That song, There's a Broken Heart for Every Light on Broadway?
Sure, but I don't see none of 'em leaving the profession to wait on table.
It's all glitter and tinsel that covers 1,000 broken hearts. Why, for instance, I knew a gal who left a good home.
Well, Beulah and I ain't got any home except for 2 rooms upstairs, and we're gonna take a crack at show business.
You don't know what actors are like. Anyway, I thought you and Beulah was tied down to this restaurant.
We just sold the restaurant.
What? When?
Day before yesterday.
You got the money for it?
Sure, cash.
Sam stopping playing.
How much?
$8,000.
The seals begin to bark again.
$8,000? Then you're an heiress.
Sure, we had finished here day after tomorrow.
Why didn't you tell me you had that in the first place? Cash makes a lot of difference in a career.
The door opens and Al Gilsworthy of the Gilsworthy's Trained Seals comes in. He is about 25 and very handsome in a banal sort of way, ambitious and not too bright. Under his raincoat, he has on a gorgeous fake military costume of red with much gold braid. He wears high, shiny hip boots like a lion trainer and tight white pants. He shakes off the snow and opens his coat.
My God, what a night.
He takes off his raincoat and hat and hangs them up.
Yeah, and I suppose the train's late.
Homer says they ain't heard from yesterday's train. Homer's a brakeman. Introduce me to the lion tamer.
That ain't no lion tamer. It's a seal set. Mr. Gilsworthy, meet Miss...
Schmidlap.
Pearl bends down from her throne with affected cordiality.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Gilsworthy.
Al shaking hands and bowing with a lady-killing manner.
Pleased to meet you.
Look out for him. He's a lady killer. He dresses like that to frighten the seals. Are you going to travel to Ashtabula in them lion tamer's clothes?
Nah, I'm going to change when I get into my berth.
There ain't going to be no birth.
What do you mean?
Sam knocking the ashes nonchalantly off his cigar.
I mean, there ain't going to be no birth.
Well, why not?
You have to take that up with the Erie, Mr. Vanderbilt.
Sam, aside to Pearl.
He's always like that. Wants a private car for himself and his seals.
Well, I can't sleep sitting up in this outfit. The pants are too tight.
Where's Sadie and the rest of them?
On their way. Is there some place I could change, Miss?
Schmidlap.
You'll have plenty of time to change. You heard what Homer said about yesterday's train?
There's a gents' washroom through that door in the first room to the right.
Thanks.
Al takes up his suitcase and goes out. Sam, sauntering over to the cash register.
You think he's pretty hot stuff, don't you?
He's awfully handsome.
Well, Anybody can look all right in them lion tamer's clothes. Anybody's a bum that dresses like a lion tamer to do a seal act. Anyway, you're too pretty and nice to waste time on a cheap lady killer like Al Gilsworthy. And besides, he's married to Sadie, who does the mind reading act.
Going over and leaning on the cigar case.
You know, the more I think of it, the more I think you've got a great career ahead of you.
Oh, Mr. Bernheimer, I'm going to call Beulah and tell her.
But not yet. Just wait a minute. Yeah, I think you've got great career ahead of you. I don't know, with all my experience in show business.
He takes her hand and begins to pat it.
But I couldn't have no career without Beulah.
Well, you see, I imagine you alone somehow. You've got one of them personalities that could hold the scene all alone. With a little training, of course. With a little training. But I could help you with that. But it would take a little money, of course.
For the first time, you begin to suspect that Pearl is not as dumb as she looks.
Oh, Mr. Bernheimer, would you?
Sure. It's kind of my mission in life to discover genius. We can't all be geniuses, Pearl. Some of us have to be discoverers.
But you ain't seen Beulah yet, Mr. Bernheimer.
What's she like?
Well, right now she's a brunette. Some people think she's prettier than me.
No, that ain't possible. And she couldn't have your personality. No town could stand two girls with your personality.
Maybe when you see her, you'll think she's got more genius than me.
Do you positively insist on Beulah?
I couldn't betray Beulah, Mr. Bernheimer. We've always done everything together. We was brought up by Aunt Minnie. That's Beulah's mother.
Oh, there's Aunt Minnie, too. Quite a family you've got with Homer and Aunt Min and everything.
She's always looked after me and taken care of my money.
Oh. She doesn't have to go along, does she?
No, she's had her career. She was in the circus.
Yeah, we might arrange a sister act.
What's that?
A song and dance act billed as a pair of sisters.
But we ain't sisters.
Your cousins, ain't you?
Yeah?
Well, that's a lot closer than most sister acts. We could call it... What's Beulah's name?
Schmidlap, same as mine.
Well, we couldn't call it that.
Why not?
The Schmidlap sisters? No, there ain't never been a German sister act. It's got to be something French or Irish.
Al's voice is suddenly heard calling from the washroom.
Hey, Sam! Hey, Sam!
What's the matter, Mr. Gilsworthy?
It's them pants. He can't get them off alone.
Maybe in real trouble.
If a SEAL trainer wants to look like a lion tamer, he's got to pay the price.
I'd go if I could.
Yeah, you kind of fell for him at first sight, didn't you?
Pearl
Stop.
looks romantically toward the gents' washroom.
He's awfully handsome.
Now, let me get this clear. Your old man left you this restaurant and you just sold it.
Yeah,
And you're finished with the day after tomorrow.
that's right.
You could leave any time?
Yeah, Aunt Minnie could stay here until Mr. Dobbs takes it over.
Wow, looks like, to me, like a big opportunity for you. Nothing standing in the way. I could begin your training right off, say tomorrow when we get to Ashtabula.
I don't know whether I could do it that quick.
Now, that's all right. Aunt Minnie could send along your clothes. The show business is like that. Always something unexpected you wasn't counting on.
Very exciting. I think it's pretty wonderful of a big man like you to occupy yourself with two girls like Beulah and I.
Oh, that's nothing.
Seems like fate, but I don't know.
Now, I've got a great idea.
What?
Well, when this tour comes to an end next month, I'm going to quit the theater.
Oh, you mustn't do that, a man like you.
Again, for a moment, it seems that Pearl just might be pulling his leg. Even Sam suspects it.
I'm going into these moving pictures. There's a lot of money to be cleaned up and a great career for a girl like you.
Oh, Sam.
That's right. Call me Sam. Yeah, I need a little more capital, but maybe you'd be willing to put up a little of what your father left you as a partner. You get me?
I don't know much about business.
Yeah, you should go right into leading parts, with a little training.
I'd have to talk that over with Aunt Minnie.
Yeah, Beulah, Aunt Minnie, who else is there?
Homer. I couldn't leave without Homer. He's so handsome. Everybody falls in love with him. You will yourself.
Well, I hope not, but you never can tell. Where is he?
Well, he's out in the yards working now. You don't think we could take Homer along too?
What's his line?
He likes Shakespeare.
Well, hams ain't in my line. There's no public for drama. That's why I'm going into these new moving pictures.
I think he'd like to recite for you.
Nah, it wouldn't be no good putting him to that trouble.
Oh, it ain't no trouble for Homer to recite.
The door opens and Al comes in. He is dressed in a checked suit which looks as if it had been packed for months. It fits horribly. He walks over to the mirror set to set his bow tie straight and regards himself for a moment like a peacock. The other two watch him, Pearl a little bedazzled, Sam with mockery.
There, what'd I tell you?
Well, what'd you tell her?
I said you wasn't human.
Al ignores him and seats himself at the table nearest to Pearl, from where he looks up at her admiringly. From the first, he is on the make, always hoping. It has gotten to be a habit. The door from the station platform opens and Marjorie comes in. Herman and Sadie follow. They are carrying suitcases and bundles and are covered with snow. As the door opens, the wind is heard howling. Marjorie is an enormous full-busted peroxide blonde who has once been the prima donna of a burlesque troupe. Herman, her husband, is a small, timid, rather shriveled man who is terrified of her. Sadie, who does a child mind-reading act, is dressed in the clothes of a girl of 15 or 16, although she will never see 35 again. She has peroxide curls falling to her shoulders. She is Al's wife and has a sad, discouraged air. There is a great deal of hubbub while they put their parcels down, shake off the snow, and get settled. Marjorie, attacking Sam at once.
Say, what do you mean going off and leaving Herman and me to pay that hellion of a boarding house keeper?
Well, I was gonna pay you an Ashtabula. I thought you could advance your room rent.
Out of what? We'd have been there still if I hadn't outsmarted the old trollop.
What'd you do?
Locked ourselves in and then climbed off the porch roof.
Marjorie, holding up her torn skirt.
Look, that's what I did doing that little acrobatic turn.
We turned the bath and left it running so she'd think we was still there. That was my idea.
Well, she'll know you ain't there when the flood begins.
All this time, Pearl watches and listens bedazzled. Sadie seats herself sourly at the end of the lunch counter, as far from the others as possible.
We got to get out of here before that lady's ceiling falls.
Marjorie regards the watch pinned on her bosom.
What time does the train go?
Well, yesterday's train ain't even been heard of.
You might ought to have to leave us behind. This would have been a swell show without me and Herman.
Well, if you asked me, I'd just as soon be left at Bucyrus's Ashtabula.
Well, I ain't introduced any of you yet. Pearl, meet Miss De La Tour, our prima donna, Miss Schmidlap.
Pleased to meet you.
Marjorie bows elegantly.
And this is my accompanist and husband, Mr. De La Tour.
Al taking over Pearl as his own property.
And little Eva over there in quarantine is Sadie. Otherwise, La Misterouse. Otherwise, Mrs. Al Gilsworthy. The child wonder who reads minds. Only she ain't got far with mine.
It's kinda hard when you can't find anything to read.
Now don't begin all over again, you two.
She's refined. That's why she's sitting in a corner.
Yeah, she was educated in a convent. You'll hear a lot about that.
Heaven knows no fury like a seal trainer scorned.
See? She's literary. She knows a lot of quotations.
Yeah, mind reading is kind of soured on her.
Sadie turns her back scornfully and begins to do her hair with an air of indifference. She wraps each curl around her finger in turn. Marjorie and Herman seat themselves at a table in the middle of the room.
Are there any waitresses in this joint?
What will you have, Miss De La Tour?
Al follows Pearl about with his eyes and with his body, when it's possible.
A ham and egg sandwich and a cup of coffee.
Same for me.
Marjorie sitting on him.
He'll have crackers and milk. You know what eggs do to your liver.
Herman accepts meekly.
And you, Miss by Mister?
Ham and eggs and coffee.
Beulah!
Beulah, responding from the kitchen.
2 mochas, 2 ham and eggs, 1 half and half with crackers.
Half and half is too rich for Herman. Make it plain milk.
Herman starts to pantomime and protest, but is ignored.
Make the half and half plain milk!
Herman, I'm the one that has to suffer when you get one of your attacks.
Good deal could be done with that voice.
Oh, it ain't like that when I sing.
Oh, do you sing?
Yes, I am Beulah. We sing and dance too. Dear me, I almost forgot about you, Mr. Gilsworthy. What do you want?
I'll go with you into the kitchen and see what you've got.
She goes out with Al, laughing and giggling.
I should think it was plain as day what he wants.
Come on, Mr. Belasco. Spill it. What's all the fuss over this singing hash slinger?
I got some news for you.
I can see you've made another discovery.
Miss Schmidlap and her cousin is joining the company in Ashtabula.
We can just get to Ashtabula as it is.
That's where you're wrong, girlie. It's Miss Schmidlap who's going to get us to Ashtabula.
Does she know it yet?
No, I'm working her up to it.
I suppose we got to travel around with this hash slinger because you ain't got a girlfriend.
Oh, pipe down.
Yeah, leaving me and Herman to climb out a window. Why, I might have broken my limbs.
That girl's an heiress.
Marjorie, nervous and glancing at her watch.
Yeah, if the ceiling don't fall on that lane lady before this damn train arrives.
God, how I hate tank towns.
Listen to Bernhardt.
Do you mind telling me how you're going to take on a couple of more hams when you can't manage this troop already?
Did you say a couple more hams?
Listen, I ain't going to pay them. They're paying me.
In ham and eggs.
Pearl has got $8,000 in cash.
Marjorie practically faints. Sadie drops a plate on the floor. They all look towards Sadie.
It's so long since I've heard of anybody with $8,000.
I suppose you'll be marrying her, and that's the last we'll see of the money.
She's got a fiancé. His name is Homer. He's a brakeman. He won the state elocution medal.
You big brute.
There's a broken heart for every line on Broadway, a million tears for every gleam they say. Those lights above you think nothing of you.
We hope you've enjoyed this reading from part of Here Today and Gone Tomorrow, a comedy by Louis Bromfield and George Hawkins. The remainder of the play, presented in 3 acts, follows the highs and lows of these characters as they try to make it big in the theater business, traveling shows, and the early years of Hollywood. Special thanks to David Crawford and to the Malabar Farm Foundation for their support with this effort. And I would like to extend a personal thank you to the alumni and community artists who have worked with our theater program and who have returned to be a part of this special presentation.